Okay.
Seems to be okay. We're on, and it seems live, and there's sound. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start recording. And we are. Okay, good. We're live.
Couple of minutes for people to kind of log on to the Facebook page. We'd be good to go.
No problem.
Yeah.
Did you have a good birthday anyway? Alex?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it because of all the
Oh,
lockdown.
no.
But I had, went up and saw some friends and had a small kind of, well, a bit of a surprise because I thought it was only going to be about 5 or 6. There was about 10, 15. So I had a good little evening with some friends up in Kent, and then came down to London the next day to have lunch with my daughter, and then she arranged a bit of niche, and a couple of others, they just ganged up and made a surprise party. So that was a real shock. That was really nice. Saw quite a few people there, and then the next day, which was my actual birthday, Nish took me out for lunch, but he picked up my Sifu as well, and Simon. That was really lovely. Cheers, Nish. That was lovely. Spending time with my Sifu, and I hadn't seen him for quite a bit. And then in the evening, later on, Nish said, "Oh yeah, check on Facebook," and it put that video up.
Oh, yeah.
That was really touching, really moving. I was really, really chuffed with that. It was totally out of the blue. So that was great. So it's 3 days I had different things happen. It was lovely. Wasn't expecting it because of all the madness. So now onwards and upwards. The next part of the adventure.
All right, it's a big one in Chinese circles, 60, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we learned how the pronunciation changes from
Yes, for birthday it's like San Li Fai Lot for happy birthday. But it's when you hit 60 for the big ones, 60 is Sao San Lin Fai Lot. Sao San Lin Fai Lot. I think I've got the pronunciation right there, but yes, it's just the correct way of saying happy birthday to someone that's hit 60. And
yeah, it's a big one. I've been to quite a few 60 birthday parties in Chinatown.
Yeah, I went to my Sifu's as well. It's a big thing because it's the 5 times the 12-year cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, for Sean. Hey, Kin. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, got a few clocking on now. When you're ready, Nish.
Yeah, let's kick it off, Al.
You read my mind. I was kick it off was in my mind. Great minds, eh? Firstly, hi Facebook, everyone. All those that have logged on, and just like to say a really big, warm welcome and thank you to Sifu Phil Morrell of Baguazhang. Thanks for being here, Phil. It's great to have you on. Just a brief intro. Phil was born in Manchester and started with karate as a young boy. Did a bit of Lao Ga and some Muay Thai, and then met his first Chinese traditional teacher, Chu Siwan, and did a village-style Chu Ga Hung Kern. You left Manchester and came to London. What year was that, Phil? Roughly.
1986.
Ah, so in the
13th of January, 12th of January, 1986, I left Manchester.
Spot on. I thought I was putting you on the spot there, but you left Manchester, came to London, and was lucky to train with many teachers in lots of different styles, including Buck May, Dragon Sign, Southern Mantis, and Taiji. And after a serious injury, had the opportunity to visit China. He went to Beijing, where you met your Bagua teacher, and you've been with him now for over 17 years.
Yeah.
So once again, welcome. To kick it off, to start it off, could you tell us a bit about the style of Baguazhang? You know, just a brief kind of overview for those that, like me, that we've heard of it, but we don't know too much about it.
Right. Although there's a few arguments about the origin of the style, most people say it comes from a man called Dong Haituan. My interpretation of what a lot of the different scientific papers about it have said is that he learnt various different styles from his family village, and at some point left his family village and wandered China. He did some, he joined some sort of Taoist group, a Taoist sect, and they did circle walking, where they chanted mantras once in the morning, once in the evening. And through the circle walking, they would clear their minds and get a connection with their bodies in the slow circle walking movement. At some point later on, he got work in Beijing, in the Forbidden City, and worked for one of the princes. He had a reputation for a high level of martial arts, and many other senior martial artists came and learnt from him. There are some discrepancies in how many, but on his tomb there are a list of 56 students who learnt from him.
Wow.
And from those 56 students come the major styles of Bagua. If you've heard of several of the major ones that you hear of a lot are Yin style, Chung style, Liang style. In Beijing, you get Gao style in Taiwan quite a lot, and in Tianjin, and they're named after the names of the students that he had who propagated that part of the system. It's each of them have a different outlook on some of the techniques, but they all have circle walking, and they all have the same basic idea and the same basic hand shapes, and then there are things built on from what that teacher knew before he went to Dong Haituan. So that's why there's so many differences.
Right. I didn't realize there were so many variations.
Yeah.
You've heard of, yeah, go on.
Out of interest, so from my reading of Baguazhang, it has a couple of things that have been attached to it. One, known as the bodyguard style, and then you also have things like either 8 animal Bagua or 8 trigram. Is there a difference between?
Well, Bagua means 8 trigrams.
Right.
If you've seen any, if you've seen the actual picture, that the Bagua is trigrams. Zhang means palm.
Yeah.
Originally, it is said that Dong Haituan didn't call his system that. He called it revolving palm, Zhuanjiang, and only later on in his life, and maybe not even by him, as we don't know much about what he actually taught and who he taught what. It started to take that name, Baguazhang. So it's, some people say that it's come from the trigrams, and it's all to do with the I Ching and other and Taoist philosophy. And some people say that came as a way of explaining it and how certain things worked after it was in fruition. So it's very difficult, as he never wrote anything down, and that we only have oral history from all the different students. All the oral history has some similarities, but also there's some differences. The 8 animal one you talk about comes mainly from a man called Sept, and he's a Yin stylist. He has an enormous system, and it's works on the different animals, and the animals are interconnected with the different parts of the Bagua. my system is different. It doesn't have the animals, but it has a different deep a different way of organizing it into what we call the 8 big palms. The 8 big palms are all the techniques using a certain palm rolled together into one form. So the 8 big palms in fan style Bagua, which is what I do, are 8 different forms. They can be learnt individually, and then 2 of the big 8 palms are the interconnection of those different palms and techniques done together. If you want to know the history, Dong Haituan, while he was at the palace, one of his students was Fan Zhirong. Fan Zhirong was born in 1840, died in 1922, so he was 82 when he died. He is the person that we look at as the founder of Fan style. He was a student of Dong Haituan, and because his family name is Fan, very much like Yin style is Yin Fu. Yin Fu was the student. Yin Fu was the bodyguard of the Dowager Empress. He was the person that is mentioned as taking the Dowager Empress out of the Forbidden City when we were bombing it. And that's where the bodyguard thing comes from. Han Zhiyong, his main student was his daughter, Fan Fenlang. Fan Fenlang was 1884. She was born, and she died in 1967, and she was my teacher's teacher. She travelled with him quite a bit. When she was 14, Fan Zhirong had to leave Beijing, and he went with another one of Dong Haituan's students, Lu Baguazhang, back to a village some distance away, Guan village. And on that route, or because of something he did, he had to leave, and there was a fight between him and a local bandit leader in the Sihong temple, and he ended up killing the bandit leader. So he had to disappear. So went to Guan with Lu Baojian, and he was there for 3 years before he came back to Beijing. Allegedly, Dong Haituan taught circle walking with some hand changes, some hand and position changes, and a lot of the other stuff was techniques, a single technique or multiples of techniques against other techniques. It wasn't in a big school. It was quite often one-to-one. It was, and how would you get out of this? And he'd show you how you get out of that, and he'd show you what that. So it is believed, and something that I believe is all the different students he had designed the rest of their systems around that information, the techniques that they were shown when they were being shown applications, because it was mainly circle walking, hand positions, and then lots of applications. And the way
so they would have all theoretically been shown different stuff then.
Yes. So if you look at all the different systems, they all have a similarity in the way in a circle walk.
Yeah.
They all have a similarity in what you hear people calling a single palm change and a double palm change. A similarity. Yeah. You see people how they walk with their hand positions. It's all very similar. But then you have a load of extra stuff on top of that, which is different in every system.
Right.
Here that's probably one of the reasons. Fan Zhirong only taught one-to-one, and he taught all of it in techniques. You would attack and he would defend, and then he would attack and you would use the defense that he'd just shown you. And that was built
very
up.
Practical.
That was built up, but it meant that there was very few students, only 5 or 6 students, and of those 5 or 6, only 2 or 3 actually had students from him. His daughter, Fan Lang, his daughter's husband, Wang Zhe, and Shi Qingxiang, who's got some students as well. So that about 3 students actually had enough training and got enough of the system together to teach it. In saying that, he only started to actually put all the system together and all the different forms together later on. So his daughter's system is quite systemized with the 8 big palms and all the other things, and Shuz's section is there are techniques in it, and there are forms in it, but the forms are not the same as my teachers. And they say that's because, as I say, they were taught all the techniques are the same, but they just weren't taught forms. They were a rough bunch of people, let's say. So they it was all about, how does this work? How does that work? If I'm attacked this way, what is the defense? If I am defending that, what's the attack? So it was all done that way.
So I've heard like the 64 palm changes, or in Bagua.
That's mainly in Gao, Gao style. Gao Yishang was the head of Gao style. He's the one that it's named after.
Right.
And he said in later life that after learning from Dong Haituan, he was traveling and he met a Taoist who said, "Oh yes, you've only learnt a little part of it, and here's the 64 palm changes, the post and pre-heaven sections."
Right, and that connects with the Bagua.
But that could quite easily, but that there again could quite easily be extra techniques yet again put together. Quite a lot of the Bagua systems do have straight line forms, a way of using the techniques one after the other in fighting applications.
I heard that they started to teach the military, but because of the numbers, they had to teach it in a linear fashion rather than circular, because it'd be too chaotic. So they did a linear version.
Well, there's lots. Unfortunately, there's been quite a few films and TV series from the 30s and 40s about this system, and so a lot of history isn't history. It's
right
from the TV.
Yeah.
Artistic license, right?
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. There's an old story about Dong Haituan. He said when he learnt the circle walking from the Taoists, he walked around a stake, walked around a tree, and he turned in towards a tree. And he walked for 7 years around this tree. And as he walked around, he felt the tree pulling him into the center. And he spoke to the Taoist. He said, "Why is this happening?" He said, "Well, you are grounding yourself with the force, and the force from the tree is pulling you in." And then after the next 7 years, he felt that he was being pushed away from the tree. But if you do circle walking, and your feet are correct, and your hips are correct, and you turn at the waist, and you push and press the way you're supposed to, there's a lot of pressure on the body to pull into the circle. So you get a feeling of being pulled into the circle. Now, a lot of traditional Chinese martial arts have a lot of poetry and things in them. And this could quite easily be a way of explaining what you are supposed to feel. You're fighting against that force of being pulled in, because you're twisting towards the center, and you're pushing towards the center. And say a lot of students find it really difficult to stay centered but turned in. It takes a lot of time and effort, and this is just a poetic way of saying what you're supposed to feel, and that if you train correctly, that's how you feel. But it's nothing to do with the tree pulling you and then you producing enough force to push the tree away. It's just how you feel.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So before we kind of delve a little bit further, let's learn a little bit more about you and how you eventually got to learning Bagua Kung Fu. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you first started in martial arts, like your first classes, and how eventually you ended up in London?
Well, as a little kid, I did Wado in Manchester. I'm from Manchester, in Stockport, outside of Manchester. I did Wado and enjoyed it. I'd seen on ITV Sport an American guy do some karate before a boxing match. So long ago, I can't remember. All in black and white. I thought, oh, do that. So I found a place that did it, and my dad took me, and we did whatever. I did it for a while. As I got a little older, I started reading the old magazines for fighters and the original combat, and saw an article on Lau Gar, and there was a guy who just started teaching in central Manchester. So I thought, I'll go and have a look. And it was a guy called George Wellington, God rest him. He's passed away, but he was a lovely guy, absolutely fantastic, and he was a very good points fighter. And he taught Alfie Lewis, and if you're old enough to remember Alfie from those days. So I trained with him for a while, and he was fantastic, and it was much more sparring, much more. It was all sparring basically. There's very little else. He was a fantastic sparrer, but I got to spar with him and Neville Ray and Alfie Lewis and several of the other boys, Steve Babs. Because there was a big group of them in Birmingham. So that there was, at one point, there was a Birmingham, Manchester and Liverpool combined team. So I did that for a while. And at the same time, we had a martial arts shop in Manchester on Swan Street run by Danny Connor, who'd been to China a few times and done and had taught loads of different things. And he ran a sort of martial arts competition in Bellevue. And two guys came and did a demonstration. They did a Taekwondo demonstration. And it turned out to be Master Sken and Master Toddy from Thai boxing. Because they originally came to the UK as Taekwondo teachers.
That's interesting.
They're both famous in Muay Thai in London.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably
Sken fought in front of the king. But they were Taekwondo black belts as well, and I think that's how they got their visa at that time. They came to teach Taekwondo. But after they'd done that, they did a demonstration of Thai boxing, which I'd never seen and nobody there had seen. This was 70s, and then they did double knives, the old
Krabi.
Yeah, Krabi, which was fantastic, and they were still quite young then, and they were incredible. So there was so I went to see them, and they had a place. There was Sken, Toddy, Master Woody, and Toddy's brother, Master A. So there's four of them, and they there was a good club in Deansgate in Manchester, and there was another club up near Swan Street. So I used to go and see them, and it was a fantastic place. I was a bit young and liked a bit of a rough and tumble, and it was a great place. But the training was really hard. They were all about fighting, and it was good. It was the start of Manchester was a great place at the time. It was the start of lots of different martial arts. I remember Ronnie Green first coming to Master Toddy. That's how old I am, unfortunately. Yeah. I remember Ronnie's first day. I was 70, late, sort of 77, 78, something like that. But so Danny Connor used to do a lot of things like that. We had Yip Chun came. Danny Connor built up like a 4-story. He had the use of a 4-story warehouse, and it was almost like a game of death. He had a different martial arts on each level.
Yeah.
Yip Chun was brought over by him. He had a great guy who we see quite a lot there, who's still in Manchester, Steve Powell, who did a lot of karate and later on did Jeet Kune Do and still teaches that today, and still fit as an ox. And he's got to be, I don't think you'd like me saying, but he's got to be in his 70s now. But all that was going on, I saw a line dance in Chinatown, and I followed the line dance back, and it went down to George Street in Chinatown, and that's where I met Master Chu Su Wen, a little Chinese guy, couldn't speak any English. He taught the line dance in the martial arts in the youth centre and community centre. And I had through an interpreter, I had a chat with him, and he said, "Okay, come and do a little bit." So I thought I was reasonably good at these sort of things, having done karate for several years and Thai boxing and everything. And I thought, well, this will be easy. And he showed me the error of my ways very, very quickly. Just gave me a few easy, what looked like really easy things to do, and I couldn't do them. And there was these little Chinese kids, and they were running rings around me. We had a couple of very good senior Western students as well. John Farrell's one of them, who's still with him now, and John's,
wow,
he won't like me either. He's 70, but still strong as an ox from all the work he's done with Mr. Chu. Mr. Chu must be 90 now,
wow.
and he still comes out every new year to do the dragon dance. So I started with that, a village style of Hungar,
Okay.
and a village style of Chugar, not Southern Praying Mantis, but with Phoenix Eye Fist and a very, very small system, 3 hand forms, knife, stick, and lots of hardening exercises, Qigong.
Right.
And that was it. And it was designed to fight the longer range systems.
Was it a Hakka system?
Yes, he was. Mr. Chu is a Hakka.
Right. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
So I learnt line dancing, southern and northern. I learnt Kalen, and he was fantastic. I'd have followed him forever. If it wasn't for the fact I moved from Manchester, I'd have followed him forever. He's in some respects, it was a shame that I couldn't stay in Manchester, but work was difficult, and I had to find work. So,
Are you still in touch with a lot of the guys from there now?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. It was I'd say getting on now, so there's less and less of us. But yeah, they still do. They still do the New Year every year. There, they still do. The Lion still comes out from that club. They still do the Dragon every year.
Be a great way of reminiscing and heading back for the thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, we all forget how old we are when we meet up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So you left Manchester then?
Yeah, 85 I applied because I didn't have many qualifications and I hadn't done much work. So I thought, well, the best thing, join the police. So I joined the Metropolitan Police. I applied in 85 and I joined the 13th of January 1986.
Right.
I came down on the 12th, which is Sunday.
Yeah. So you came down and then you settled in London gradually.
Yeah, in London. I had I'd been Mr. Chu knew a lot of people, so he said, "Well, go and see this person, go and see that person." But it was difficult. I was living in Hendon at the time, but when I'd finished that, I was sent to the West End, so I lived round from Berwick Street Market.
Oh right. How were you doing? Was the big police training thing was in Hendon? It's still there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm. And then we had a place to live in Soho. There was 600 of us in there.
Really?
The building doesn't exist anymore.
So that's not a bad place to lay your head though, around there.
Yeah. But no, it was for somebody from Manchester. I'd been to London once before or twice before.
Wow.
It was strange, but yeah. So I worked in the area and I lived there. On just around the corner from Berwick Street Market, so 5 minutes from Chinatown.
Amazing.
So I quite often found myself in Chinatown, and from there it's 5 minutes to the Erdang Centre. So I'd pop to the Erdang, which is the Erdang? It used to be a dance place near Pineapple Studios. It's
right, yeah.
But Tang Toi Tak from Pat May used to train there. Ho Gung Hua from Inox
right
train there.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people used to train there.
Yeah.
It was quite a popular place. So I got to see quite a few people. I started doing a bit of because I was so busy. I started doing a bit of Tai Chi. I found Dan Doherty in Covent Garden because that was because one of my friends was going, so I went to see him. So I did some with Dan, which was very interesting. In 80, 86, 87, it was hard work. I'd always thought Tai Chi was nice and simple and easy. Well, I met Steve Wooster there.
Yeah.
I've known Steve Wooster over 30 years, but
Wow.
it was hard work. It was hard work. Rolling, fighting, wrestling. There was a lot of that. But also being in the service, I also got to box and wrestle, Olympic wrestle, because we had Olympic wrestlers who had a team. So every now and again you get a bit of time off if you had a competition. So I learned a bit of wrestling. We did a bit of boxing.
Is that as part of the police force?
Well, yeah, in those days, I say we're talking 35 years ago now, sport was a big thing.
Wow.
So there were quite a few people. We had Commonwealth Game medalist wrestlers and judo people who joined the service, who would run a club, and then we'd have inter services competitions with the fire brigade and other people like that. And also we do a lot of that with community groups. So you'd go. I mean, we used to have quite a lot of wrestling matches with a group in Hackney. There's a fantastic Hackney group. One of their guys was an Olympic wrestler, and he knew our coach. So
whereabouts in Hackney was that?
Oh, we're talking 35 years ago. It was a community centre. I can't remember what it was.
Was it near the marshes?
Yeah, it would have been
the Wally Foster Community Centre.
It may have been.
Yeah.
I just remember getting my getting a good hiding.
I just know because I grew up there.
Yeah.
That's where I grew up in Hackney, next to that.
But it was good because you got to interact with different community groups, and everybody got to to have a chat afterwards, and it was a good way of building bridges. So we used to do a lot of that, a lot of football, a lot of boxing, judo, wrestling, all that sort of stuff. Loads of it. Doesn't happen as much now, unfortunately. But there you go.
So you did a little bit of Buck May.
Yeah. So and then I started with Tony Tang Choi Tak. So it's Dave Stevens' teacher. So I met Dave there.
Wow.
And Tang Choi Tak was a lovely guy, and he taught the same way as Fan Fan Lang taught. He used to teach a technique and a technique and a defense. So you'd learn 4 or 5 techniques as applications, and then you do them all as one movement, and that would be the first bit of the form. So you didn't learn the form first; you learned the techniques first.
Just broke it down.
It was. Yeah. He was a lovely man. So I started with him, and I also, Eddie Barrios introduced me to Hog War from Iron Ox. So I did some Iron Ox, which was a fantastic experience.
Excellent.
It's a really, really nice system. I didn't realise how nice it was until later on, but it was, there was something very special about it. So I then had to stop because I moved from central London into protection duties. So I spent 2 years looking after the royal family. So I did protection outside of Kensington for Kensington Palace. So when Lady Diana, God rest her. So I looked after her and William and Harry when they were little kids.
Wow.
So I did protection duties there. So they gave me a gun and bodyguard training, so I did 2 years of that. But then I moved out into Wanstead, Ilford, Chadwell Heath only for a very short time, and then I was back in the West End and straight into Chinatown. Started again with Tang Toi Tak because I really liked the Pak Mei. It fitted me really, really well. But I found that I was used more and more in Chinatown, and eventually I was posted as part of a group that looked after Chinatown, all the problems and any sort of gang problems there were in those days.
Yeah.
So I found it difficult then to actually be a part of any of the martial groups that were part of Chinatown, because it would put too much pressure on the teacher to have me as a student.
Yeah.
And in comparison to the other teachers. So it was very bad in one respect, but really good in another. So I couldn't have anybody as a teacher, but I could visit everybody,
Right.
practice with everybody. Nobody would ever say no. They'd show me. If I wanted to see something, they'd show it me, because they didn't want, you know, I just said, well, Kung Toi Tak showed me that, so why, you know, and so I was really surprised. When I first came to London, there was Victor Can from Wing Chun. He had a place in Macclesfield Street, and in Macclesfield Street as well, there was a martial arts shop, A to Z.
That's right. Yeah,
That's an old one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that,
People are old enough to remember A to Z.
Yeah. No, was it? There was a couple. Was that
Not
Yap
Yap,
Yum?
no.
It's a different one, wasn't it? In Macclesfield Street, because that was the one I used to go to first of all.
Yeah. So I used to go in there quite a lot. But there was a lot of other groups. There was a Bamboo Forest Temple group above Corals, opposite the pagoda. It was I'll get his name right, Yun Ying's. Who died late 90s, from what I can remember. And his son took over. His son took over. Young Fun Hit. He's the one that still does the. Him and Kim Law still do the dancing for New Year.
Right.
So that old schoolroom looks like your backdrop. Still does. Right. So I used to pop up there regularly and have a cup of tea with young Sifu, and we'd chat about things. And some of the other students, his dad never taught foreigners. His dad only taught Chinese.
Yeah.
But I could go in there, no problem at all, and sit and have a cup of tea and watch them train, watch them practice for New Year. And they were quite quiet until they were doing Keilun dancing. And I did some. Yeah, I did some, and they were like, right. And it was another door open, so they were quite open.
You'd learn it from Master Chu, right?
Yeah. So
what was the what kind of opened the doors to you in Chinatown overall? Was it because you'd learned Kung Fu and you'd been training with Pak Mei Sifu, or was it a mixture of both, and being a police officer? And
a bit of police officer, because nobody wanted to be left out, so everybody had to be visited. But I knew people who they knew. I'd met people who they knew. When I was with Mr. Chu had lots of visitors. There was a film star he used to play Wong Fei Hung, Quan Tak Hing, a famous film star. He visited us once. I visited Mr. Chu. I remember when Where the Warrior was being shown on TV.
Yeah.
That was 85, probably 85.
Around there. Yeah.
And I'd watched the Kung Fu Way, and it was Tan Hon Chung, who was Jim Muglo's teacher. And I went to line dancing that night, and we're doing that. And Mr. Chu went, "Hang on, we've got to go to the restaurant." I thought, well, I want to do training, so no, we're going to the restaurant. So we walked out, went to the Kwok Man restaurant, and he introduced me to Chan Hon Chung, who was in the Kwok Man restaurant in Manchester. He'd been to visit my teacher. So the next day we did a demo for him and line dancing. He came and he had a chat. He was a lovely man. So this was probably before Jim actually went to visit him in Hong Kong. So I had him, Leung Ting from Wing Chun visited us at that sort of time as well. Our well-known Pat Mei teacher, So King Kwong, he visited us. I remember his visit very well. There was me and one other white guy, Bob Melia, and Mr. Chu took us there. We were there at lunchtime because we were both not working at the time, and he took us to the con art rooms. We walked into this room, and it was just full of Chinese people, and there was silence as they stared at us. And we sat down at the front seat with Mr. Chu in the middle, me and Bob, and we had this Pat Mei demonstration. And it was So King Kwong and his team from Hong Kong. And they did the entire demonstration snarling at us. But he was really nice afterwards. So King Hong, he was a really nice guy, but power. That's why I looked for Tang Toi Tak when I came to London that time. But because I'd met these people and I'd seen these people quite a lot, quite a few people in London were happy to see me. Or when so, well, I know your teacher, I know your master's friend, or this and that. It was helpful. There was I don't know if you remember Master Chan, a very thin guy with a long, slim beard. He used to do qigong a lot. You drive cars over him. He could drill his finger through a plate. That was in the. He used to visit regularly to London and Manchester. But he was a friend of my teacher's as well. And he had students in London, so that helped. And so all these little things you find in Chinese society. You obviously are aware that if you understand a bit and try your best, people are very open. If you eat what you're given and show a bit of respect and happen to have made a bit of an effort, nothing's too difficult.
Yeah, make that little bit of effort to understand the culture, and it goes a long way.
Chan Poi Kong, that man, Chan Poi Kong. All these people I've mentioned, I'll have to stick photographs up at the end so people can remember.
Great, yeah.
But to Master Chan, most people, if they've seen him before, they would remember him. He was a very, very strange man, but my hell, what power he had! Tiny little thing, but. He was a good guy. So I get to meet loads of people. I met Li Xing from the Canton restaurant, the Wing Chun man.
Yeah.
So Austin Go, Nigel Fan, and Eddie Yo. So I used to see them quite a lot. In fact, I worked with Eddie later on because Eddie used to run a sort of extras for Chinese extras. And we used to use them a lot if we needed people for ID parades, and they had to be Southeast Asian. So we used to go to Eddie before he went and started playing golf. So I used to see a lot of people. Dragon Sign, Casey Tsang is still about. He still runs a Dragon Sign. But I used to sit and have breakfast with Li Fu Sao, who was one of the other Dragon Sign people from Chinatown, in the Sun Lun Cafe, which doesn't exist anymore. I even did something for Jackie Chan once, about 1998 probably, when Rush Hour came out. We did a big thing for him in Leicester Square. I turned up on one of his calendars in uniform, pulling him back through his coat. So I've been extremely lucky. Because of all that, and because I knew about line dancing and other things, I started taking more of an interest in Chinese New Year, and for the last sort of 25 years, I've helped organise New Year. The Chinese New Year used to be in Gerrard Street.
It's just grown.
The stage was outside.
No easy feat to organise something like that. My God.
Well, it was
so much now.
Organised wasn't the word at the start.
Yeah.
I remember the year they tied firecrackers all around the lights at Macclesfield Street, and then they put the barriers around that so that people could see it, and it went off like a war had started. It blew all the windows out of the restaurants. It blew all the windows out of the Exchange building across the road. There was nowhere for anybody to go. After that, we got permission to use Trafalgar Square, and after several years, it got so big.
Yeah.
There was a year that my memory's not good for non-martial artists. A very popular, pretty female violinist, whose name's completely...
Chinese one?
Yeah, his name's completely escaped me.
Yeah, gorgeous. Great violinist.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. It's a shame, but she played. And there was all this talk about there'll be loads of people coming to the West End to see her. And on the bill was a group from Beijing called the Black Panthers. And on the day, we were informed the Black Panthers had sold more records than the Beatles, and practically every mainland Chinese person in the UK had come to London to see them. It was carnage. You'd never seen so many people in your life, and that's one of the main reasons they moved from Leicester Square to Trafalgar Square, because they just needed more space.
Vanessa May.
Vanessa May, well done.
Google. Gorgeous though.
Yes, yeah. Everybody worried about her, but there was nobody to watch her. But when this other band came on, my God.
Wow.
But yeah, so we had that, and as it got busier and busier, it got harder and harder for the Lion teams. So we had to I had to broker deals with the Lion teams to then split them between a Saturday and a Sunday and one-way systems. And so I got a very good working relationship with a lot of the teachers, a lot of the students from all the different. I was just lucky in that respect. Unlucky in the fact that I couldn't learn fully from anybody, but really lucky in all the people that I could speak to and get on with.
Yeah, amazing though.
But then I got badly injured. I split a disc, L5S1. I got a very bad spinal injury in a really, really bad fight, which I wasn't winning.
All right.
I've had far too many of those. And
on duty or off duty?
Yeah, on duty. I worked it out for somebody once how many fights I'd had, and it was horrible.
Right.
It just, for the first sort of 15 years or so, we didn't have stab-proof vests. We didn't have batons. We didn't have quick cuffs. We didn't have gas. We had a little stick which had to be hidden because you didn't want to inflame anybody. So the whole thing had to be hidden in a pocket in your trousers. And a nice white shirt and a nice tunic, so you looked smart. But in those days, people fought fair. So
yeah, changing times.
Yeah, so it was. But there was a lot of times when I've had to be physical, and where people have been physical back. And I know that the things that I've, even when I started learning Baguazhang, I know the stuff that I learned works because I've had to use it
right.
on more than one occasion. But my back was ruined. I couldn't fix it. Whatever I did, whichever teacher I went to, I couldn't get exercises to fix it. I just couldn't get over this injury. And they were looking at surgery to put a collar around it and some wire in it basically to hold it together, and it was a 50-50 whether I'd be better or worse. And at that time I got an opportunity to go to Beijing 2003 to do some language learning.
Okay.
Right. Because I was dealing with a lot of Chinese people, a lot of people from mainland China at the time, from Fujian province.
Yeah.
And they needed, a lot of people needed help, and it was very difficult. And most of the people we'd dealt with before were Cantonese speakers, so I got the opportunity to do that. And so I thought, well, while I'm going there, I'll see if I can find something I'm interested in. So I went on a site called China From Inside, ChinaFromInside.com. A guy called Jarek Szymanski runs it, who is a genius when it comes to traditional Chinese martial arts in China. He went to China very early, probably the 80s. He's a fluent Chinese speaker. He's learned from lots and lots of different people, lives in Shanghai. But I saw an article on his site about Wen Dasheng, who's my teacher. And it sounded interesting, and I'd seen Baguazhang before, but not like it was described in this article. And he had some weapons that I'd never seen used before, and I thought, well, that'd be it. If I'm going there, I might go and see him. So I got a hold of Jarek and asked him if he could ring him for me and give me an introduction. So he rang him and got a call back and said, if you write to him, he'll write back. So I got one of my interpreters to help me from Beijing to help me with a letter, and I wrote to him. And 2 and a bit weeks later, he wrote back. Send me a letter when you're coming. I'll see you 5 times a week. We'll do this while you're here.
What was the initial letter? Was it that you were interested in training, or?
Well, I said yes. I'd like to see it. I'd like to do some training if that's possible. It's because I thought, oh, well, Baguazhang, I've seen it. It's just walking about. It's nothing too strenuous. I'm pretty sure I can. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure I can manage that. And I thought once I did the original letter that he'd go, I can see you at the weekend maybe, or I can see you once or twice. The letter came back. I'll see you every day, Monday to Friday.
Wow.
I thought, okay. So I wrote back saying, thank you very much. This is where I'm staying. Where do you want me? And he said, right, I'll meet you halfway. And he gave me a place, a little park, which was, I didn't realise was slightly closer to me than it was to him.
Wow.
At the time, because I was going to Haidian province, which is up near up where the universities are, away from central Beijing, and he lives much closer to central Beijing. So I didn't realise he was cycling 40 minutes to get to me at the time.
Wow.
But the night, it was all going really well, and then a very similar thing like this year happened. SARS happened, 2000.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought, no, and I'd made all the arrangements and everything. And I wrote him a letter and saying, well, if I can come, I will still come, but I understand if you can't make it. And I got a letter back, if you come, I will be there. So I thought, right, okay. So I got, me and two others got on a flight, the only three people on a Boeing, on a jumbo, and flew to Beijing, which was empty.
Yeah.
Everything was shut. Everything was closed. All the university was shut. I'd heard about this bustling city, and it was empty. There was nobody. The day before I went, I was helped through a glass window at work.
Right.
And so my back was worse than it had ever been. I was in a real mess. I could hardly carry my bag to the station, let alone get it on the plane. But I managed to get there. I managed to get to Beijing. I got to my room. I thought, okay, well, I'll get to bed. I've got classes in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'll see him. And Beijing beds, they're like concrete. There's no giving them at all. Literally, the floor is less solid than the beds they gave us. And I was in tears. I was in agony. Couldn't sleep. Went down. Did 4 hours Chinese on a seat that was made for a 12-year-old, and I've always been under height, let's say, and so I thought, well, I can't contact him because I can't speak to him properly. My Chinese is not good enough. I'll have to go.
Yeah.
So I got on his letter. He said, "I'll meet you at this park at 4 o'clock. I'll be carrying a sword, so you know who it is." I got to the park. Everybody had a sword.
Oh no.
Luckily, I'd seen photographs in Jarek's site, so I knew it was. I said to him, "I'm very sorry. I've got a really bad back. I do apologise. I don't think I can do this. It would be very interesting just to have a look." Now, I could have said anything because my Chinese was poor. And he said, "Right, train." So for 2 hours, he put me through walking, fiddling with my positions, moving my hips. And it was purgatory. So after 2 hours, he went, "Good. Tomorrow. See you tomorrow." Ming Tian Dian, they say in Mandarin. Says, "Tomorrow again, meet." So I thought, oh, no, I can't. So I hobbled to the bus. I got on the bus. Luckily, an old lady was getting off at my stop. She helped me off because I couldn't stand upright by then. I tightened up. I went to bed, literally a grown man crying. I was in agony. But I went Tuesday, and I kept going because for some reason he just wouldn't understand that I couldn't come. And on Friday morning, when I went, Friday afternoon when I went there, although I was in agony, my back wasn't sore. The back was fine. The rest of my body was broken, but my back was fine. I thought, this is great. So I said, right. At that point, I thought, well, I'll come in the mornings. Then I can rest in the afternoons. I won't do the lessons. I can do that because he doesn't speak any English, so I'm doing enough Chinese. I'll read the books and I can rest. So I said, right, is there any chance you can come in the morning? He went, yeah, morning's good. 8:30. Right, so I have the weekend off. So I had Saturday and Sunday off. 8:30 Monday, I was there. We trained till 11. And then we went, right, see you in the afternoon. I thought, what? Right, so 8:30 to 11 in the morning and 4 till 6 in the afternoon.
Brilliant.
All right, great, okay. I was there for 6 weeks. So Monday to Friday, for the last 5 weeks was 8:30 to 11 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. By the end of it, no problems with my back, and except for 2 times when I've been in quite bad fights and I've had a bit of a twinge, I've not had a problem with my back. No, I've not had to take any tablets, I've not had any operations, nothing. So after that first 6 weeks, I thought, well, I can't stop doing this.
Yeah.
He taught me 2 things. He taught me a basic circle walking form and a figure 8 walking form. And it was interesting. I didn't know then how much stuff was in the system. I had no idea of how big a job learning it was going to be, but it was working. And he said he hoped that I'd come back. He videoed everything for me. He said, I'll do it now, you video it, and then you can take it home with you. I hope to see you again.
Fantastic.
So I came back upset that I was not in China, because I loved the place. I just wanted to be there training. And I came back to work on a Monday, and my boss said, oh, I'm sorry about this, but you've got to go to Beijing in November. I thought, oh dear. I said, you've got to fly to Beijing and you've got to go to Fujian, because there's a lot that we were having problems with Fujian. So you need 10 days in Fujian. I said, well, is there any chance that I can fly earlier? He said, yeah, you fly, as long as it's not any more money, because we're not paying for that, and as long as you take a leave, you can go. So I went about 2.5 weeks earlier, did another 2.5 weeks with him, and then went to Fujian and did the work. After that, unfortunately, I was ruined. I had to keep going. So since then, so that's 2003, I've been 3 times a year, a month at a time, for the last 17 years.
Wow, yeah.
Wow.
It gets you like that, doesn't it? It's like home from home when you get there as well. Yeah. That's quite fascinating.
So Phil, what were those first 5 weeks like? I mean, like, can you give us a little bit more detail about what you were being taught and how you were feeling about it?
Yeah, well, I've not done anything like it. We did what you start with in I would imagine in all different Bagua systems is walking a circle. Now, to get to walking a circle, you have to be able to walk, but in a straight line first. Now, in my, I can't speak for any other system really, but for ours, our step is quite a short step, and you put your feet together, knees together, sink, as if you're sitting down. So the weight just sinks as far as you can go. You then lift one foot and put it forwards as far as it will go, while your heel of the foot your weight on is still on the ground. That's how far you're going to step. You place the foot, you take the weight from the back foot onto the front foot and slowly move forward. And it's like somebody's got hold of your hips and are pulling your hips forward on a carriage.
Yeah.
Your head doesn't bob up and down. And so if you were doing it behind a hedge, it looks like you're sitting down and somebody's dragging you along. There's no up and down movement.
Yeah, just transferring the weight.
Yeah,
through.
the most important thing is you push through the heel. In our system, it's important you push through the heel. So the step is not that wide. The step is as far as you can do it. So depending on the day, Mr. Wen my teacher has a saying, says it's the middle path, which is the same thing that Chu Su Wen used to say, take the middle path. Train every day, don't do too much, don't do too little. And Mr. Wen is the same. You sit as far as you can sit on that day at that time. And your foot goes as far as it will go with the weight on the heel. And that's how far you're going to step that day. Now that step will get wider as you warm up, but you never step farther than you can being able to keep your heel on the ground, because you have to do that really slowly. When you speed up, the heel starts to lift as you move. But when you're practicing, you do it slowly. So you do it in a straight line first, and then you do it in a circle. So you draw a circle on the ground, which would take about anywhere, at least 8 steps, but bigger is okay. Less than 8 steps means a little bit too much pressure on your knees to start off with. And the inside foot goes around the the circle that you have drawn. The outside foot goes around the second circle, which is exactly 1 foot width away from the first circle. So it's almost like your front foot, the first foot, the inside foot, is going in a straight line, and your outside foot then curves round to keep on the line. And you sink throughout all that, and you learn how to walk like that for a while. Then you learn how to walk like that, holding various different positions, and slowly but surely, there's one of the main systems for us for the circle walking is a figure 8. Walk in a figure 8. So you walk, and in the center is a palm change, is a technique which changes the position to move on to the thing. There are 8 changes in this, so 8 palm positions and 8 techniques in the middle. You walk so slowly that should take 20 minutes. So it's a real grind on the legs. Now it starts with your hips facing directly forwards, so that there's no twist at all. And as the hand positions change throughout those 8 changes, the twist in your lower spine increases. So it allows you to warm up the legs and warm up the hips and warm up the spine as you slowly but surely twist farther and farther into the center, while keeping your base in the same line. So each time you change the hand position, you relax that twist and then twist back in even tighter. The same with the central piece. It's one of the major walking things that we do in Fanstar. But it's hard work. It's not terribly pretty, and so a lot of people don't continue to do it. But it's a bedrock. It's the jibengung, as the Chinese call it, the basic stuff that you must practice. Excuse me. My teacher says that he has an 20-80 rule that he thinks of. If you can learn the basics and the 20% of the stuff that fits you, like like the back of your hand, if you know it inside out, just that 20% of the system, you're 80% of the way to having mastery. The last 80% will give you the extra 20%, but you can manage with the 20% if you learn the right 20% correctly. So what they used to teach is the 8 big palms. The 8 big palms are Ta, which is collapsing palm, which is a single palm like that. Most of the strikes are like this. You hit with this part of the palm. Most of the techniques in that form are used this way. Zhuang is knocking, and it's a double pushing palm, and it's all the techniques in that form are either like this or like this. They're a double pushing palm. P is chopping, so all the techniques are like this, or spinning, or in and out like this, rotating in and out. Chuan is piercing, so all the techniques are like this. All the techniques have got a piercing aspect to them. The only one of the 8 big palms that's actually on a circle is Zhuang, which is rotating. And that is like a rotated, like you see a lot of the Bagua in a circle with 8 different changes. Now there's quite a complicated one, which is a modern day one, which is like for competitions. But the original one is very slowly done, quite difficult to do, and not pretty, but it's designed to build a grinding strength in you, and is technique oriented. Then there's swaying, which is Huang, which is done really slowly, which is almost Tai Chi like, and that's all this swaying and this sort of movement. There's a lot and getting connectivity in the body to get elasticity in the body. And the last 2 are Rao Shenjiang, which is body coiling, and the linked palm, Lian Huang. Now the linked palm is done on 9 castles, so it's a way of learning evasive stepping. So you circle around each of the 9 palaces in different directions, moving backwards and forwards, and there's techniques through all of them. I couldn't tell you what Rao Shenjiang looks like because I've never seen it. I believe it is what you do when you can do everything, and it just comes to you.
Instinctively.
You do as you feel.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I don't know anybody who knows it. It's one of those, but I think it's when you've learnt everything else, you can just interconnect them as you're moving throughout them. But so what people, what Mr. Wen did, and what most people do, is they learn the figure eight, two of the Qigong ones, which is Jingan Dali Fa, which is a strength building exercise, which comes in two parts: one for health, one for strength. A straight line fighting form, which has all the four major palms collapsing, knocking, chopping, and piercing up and down in a straight line, integrated in different orders, so that you get used to being in one position and using a technique, and then being able to use that technique from a different position. It just swaps them around and gives you something to practice. And then you learn one of those four major of the 8 big palms, depending on what you like. I'm a big lad. I'm 240 pounds at the moment. P is up and down really fast, flying in and out, dropping into stance. It's very, very difficult. And although I can do it, I can't do it very well. It's not one for me. The techniques can be done high up, but to be very good at it, you've got to be thin, you've got to be quick. Zhuang, knocking, I am big enough and it's good for me. It works perfectly for me. Whereas some of the lads who can do P can't do that. So what you're supposed to do, you learn one of those that fits you. Then you learn one or two of the weapons that fit you. That's your 20%. And if you can do that without thinking, you're 80% to mastery. Everything else adds to it, but it doesn't get you that much farther.
An interesting way of looking at it, actually.
Yeah. But the problem nowadays is people rush through that 20%, aiming for the stuff, thinking that if they get that specialist thing, that specialist knowledge at the end, it'll make a lot of difference. When in fact, the grinding hard work at the beginning,
exactly, the foundation,
gives you 80% of what you need.
Right.
The rest of it, and also he says, actually just says that some people only want that 20%. They don't want the other stuff, and it's only for people who are going to pass it on, learn the stuff that they can't really do. Because he says there are two types of teachers. There's those teachers who are fantastic, who do a really well. You look at them and think their skill is fantastic, and they've got hundreds of students, and all their skill is rubbish. And you get the old man whose skill is not very good. All his students are great. Yeah, it's not what your teacher can do; it's what your teacher can teach you to do.
Yeah.
So you need the other stuff, because one of your students may be big and heavy and strong, and one of your students may be a young slim girl or a young slim man. You need different techniques for the different students, and that's what makes a good teacher.
Yeah.
So that's how it's put together. But there are so many. There's lots of other hand forms. There's lots of weapons. Some of the weapons are for big heavy people, like the Baguazhang, the big knife. We have a straight sword, one straight sword form like the Tai Chi sword. We have a Bagua sword, which is a longer version of the straight sword.
Yeah.
So a long straight sword and the Baguazhang, you need to be quite strong. Big spear, you need to be quite strong. But some of the other weapons, you don't need to have the strength, but you need to have the speed. So it's
you use the gim.
Yeah. It's we have two. We have where's my? Oh, I don't think I'm sure on it. Oh, my God. This is the Baguazhang. Yeah.
That's a big long one.
Yeah. So we have this one, and you have the normal size one. The techniques are different. It's the same as the Baguazhang and normal do. The Baguazhang is much bigger. There's the Chinese have a saying about the two doughs. The normal do follows the body. The Baguazhang, the body follows the knife.
Right.
So
because of the weight.
also you have all this, the movements around the body,
Yeah.
protecting. You don't do that with a Baguazhang. The
Step
Baguazhang is,
down the sword.
yeah, the Baguazhang is heavy, so
Yeah.
you push it, you use its weight to
Yes.
transfer it forward, and you go after it.
Right.
You don't spin the weight around you. You use the weight against your opponent.
Mm.
Is there much in the way of pole forms?
Yeah, we have one normal pole form, which helps with I don't know what the Cantonese geng, with the use of that. We have one of those. We have a lot of exercise with a long pole to build physical strength in the shoulders and in the back and in the hips, to help with spear work. But we use a lot of big spear.
Right.
We do big spear. There's several different ideas about getting strength. We use the big spear, and we use the usual la nadia, deflect and push out. But we also move it from side to side and over the head, so you get a pulling, twisting motion. And we do that with the pole as well. But also, because it's a long spear, it can be used close quarters, but it requires a lot of strength. So the spearhead is a long way away from you, and you pull the spearhead towards you quickly, and you lift the shaft up above your head. So the spear is near your hand here.
Yeah.
So you then got it almost like a dagger, with its with the leverage of the spear shaft over it in the hands. So you need a bit of strength to hold it, but you've got a lot of leverage with a sharp blade object close to, so you can use it as a long distance or a short distance.
Mm.
And then deer horn knives, which are used in Baguazhang quite a lot of things, although we have two different types of those.
And so in terms of like the hand techniques, you said a lot of them are linear.
Mm.
So in terms of application, would you describe the system as just like full on harsh contact with conditioning you kind of through the opponent, or
we have in fan style, I can't mention for the others, but in fan style we have sandbag striking to get some strength in your hands and to get a little bit of conditioning. We have the long spear shaking to get some strength and some size. We have cudgel. It's called cudgel twisting, but it's like getting geng, but also it's a small piece of wood, a gnarly piece of wood, which you squeeze and pull, and twist and pull. One, to get some strength in your hands, but also to keep dexterity in your fingers, because we have a technique for carrying jugs to like a grip.
Yes.
An empty jug, and you add sand to it each week to get heavy. So because Fung De Chang, sorry, not Fung De Chang, what am I talking about? Master Fan, he liked grabbing seizing arts. He had strong hands.
Yeah.
So all these things are to add to the strength. But as far as our walking circle is concerned, most of our footwork technique is it's called sanjiabul. It's triangular step, 4 directions, 8 points. So if you think of a horse stance, it is not a cat stance you move into, but if you think of a horse stance and you move your right leg in front to make it a cat stance, and then move it back to horse stance, and then move your left leg into cat stance and back to horse stance. It's similar to that, but rather than the cat stance, we're in a walking stance. It's a different stance that I have no name that can convey what it looks like. That is 1 direction and 2 points. So if you think of that on the side, 4 sides of a square.
Yeah.
So you do 1 step forward, and then you step across the square and do a horse stance on the next side and 2 points, and that's your 4 directions and 8 points.
Right.
Once you've done that, you then start going from backwards to forwards. So you'll attack forwards and then there's a technique for spinning quickly and then going backwards out of that square, and vice versa. And that's with the 4 main palm techniques: ta, drang, pi, and dran. The piercing, chopping, knocking, and collapsing. So there's different techniques moving backwards and forwards. Fan's originator, Fan Zhiyong, had a nickname. It was called Fan the Madman. There are lots of different reasons for that, but his daughter told my teacher that he was called Fan the Madman because when he did that 4 directions, 8 points triangular step, he looked like a madman whirling from side to side, and his arms and legs flashing out at speed. And that's one of the main sort of stepping and fighting techniques. We use that. We use the circle walking as a supplementary exercise, but it's a powerful exercise that must be continued. But as far as, if you look at any of our forms, quite a lot of the techniques are done on a part of a circle, almost like a zigzag stepping, but an arc of a circle. We step in an arc.
Yeah.
So it's not like, we look at the circles not just as walking a circle, but the circle of tendons and sinews squeezed in opposite directions. Yin style, hold their hand. I don't know how good my camera is. Hold their hand like this. It's a sharp, and they pierce out. It's a piercing arc. Yin style. Tung style, hold their hand like this. He was a wrestler. So his is more about techniques of grabbing things and wrestling. Now, Fan style, hold it like this, fingers close together, but a bend in the arm. They bring the elbow in, so the crook of the elbow points to the sky, and the bottom of the elbow points towards the ground. They push out with the heel of the palm and pull back with the fingers. If you do it right, that strains all the tendons and the muscle in your forearm and up towards in your arm by twisting. It twists it all, and it's less a bit of you forcefully twisting and more of the position of your arm that gives it the twist.
Yes.
The idea is to have the twists in your arms, but relax while you're in that position. So you don't have to relax to move. You just move because you're not tight because you're tight. You're tight because of the position you're in. So you just move. So this comes out, pushes in, pushes out. The other hand comes under the elbow and pushes out towards the center. So that arches your back slightly. So that tightens the muscles in your back. It tightens the ribs on one side and opens them slightly on the other. And when you walk the other way, the ribs tighten on this side and tend to
From your previous training in Pak Mei and other arts, what similarities of styles did you think to yourself, man, this is like this style, this feels very similar, or did it feel completely different? Did it feel similar to, say, the Pak Mei you've done, or the Mantis, or?
I found most of the techniques that I've done in everything in the past, I can find in Baguazhang. But they're in everything. You only have 2 hands and 2 feet. The only difference, I believe, in a traditional Chinese martial art, that they're all great. If it's a traditional art taught a traditional way and you practice it traditionally, at the end of your journey, you'll have the same as everybody else. The problem is that people don't do enough of the Jibengung. That is the only real difference between a lot of the arts I see. The techniques, if you, let me just think of one. Everybody's done some Wing Chun, so Bong Sao. So when you do single hand Chi Sao, you do this, this, this. So Bong, my Cantonese is rubbish now, Bong, Tan, Gam, I think it is, like that. So it's a block, empty block, push out attack. Now you've seen a lot of Baguazhang where they do something around the head like this. If you just, rather than go in a nice flash circle like that, if you go Bong Sao, Tan Sao, Gam Sao. It's exactly the same technique. It's just you're, rather than using the flick up motion for the Bong Sao that we would normally use and the flick out motion that you'd use here and then the strike, you're using your hip instead. So you're using, it's coming over here, you're using your hip to turn your body, to bring it round, still holding on, and you just continue through. It's the same.
Energy difference.
Yeah,
like
the technique is the same. Yeah. There are literally hundreds of times I have gone, well, that looks, or if I did that this way, it would be the same. So in the Pat May that I've done in in Huangdang, in Swaying Palm, this.
Universal.
I was talking to Sean from Iron Ox.
Yeah.
One of their major techniques.
Yeah. Yeah.
Difference is that the only difference is with ours is that we're using whole body to dip and lean forward and dip, so we're not putting so much energy on the hips compared to Iron Ox. It's exactly the same thing. The Ji Ben Gung is different.
Yeah, it's in Jalga as well in Summer Jin.
Yeah,
we have that same kind of technique. So, like you say, there's similarities because the body moves in a particular way.
So it's the Ji Ben Gung is the thing. The basic way of producing the power is the thing. That's what makes the system. The rest of it is just technique.
I just found it very interesting in terms of the way you're describing the bug right that you do with the elbow facing up, elbow in, hand pull back, the activation of the ribs and the power coming forward.
Pushing the elbow forward to round the back, same. Galga.
Yes.
You know,
maybe most Southern Mantis or even Hakka based arts, they have that very similar principle. So
it's because the body moves in that way, and you know there's reasons for engaging the back to bring that body power into the arm. So those systems that you use, there's got to be that similarity or understanding, and there's a layer of understanding that makes them all have those same principles.
Yeah, well, we do pole standing, you know, Wuji Drang. We do the usual pole standing as well to get a center. We do shoulder striking, which is something you do.
Yeah,
we're not quite as vigorous as I've seen Paul be very vigorous.
Oh yeah,
we're not quite as vigorous, but we do. There's a thing called piercing hands. We do, where you face one of your colleagues, and you'll do the triangular step, and as you step forward, you pierce out, and they pierce out towards you as well. Yeah. So the strike is about here, and it rubs along the arm.
Yes.
So you do this.
Grinding.
So you're grinding the arm in a less aggressive manner, but over time you're still getting the same.
Definitely. So you're doing a grinding rather than a knocking.
Yeah.
For condition.
Although there's a 2-man form. To give you an idea of how some of the things work together, and the first technique in that is Sam Sing.
Right. Yeah.
But rather you do a lower Sam in the Sam Sing, we just do this.
Yeah.
We do one, and this one it's a block, and then you're into the position, so you push forward towards the opponent. So the wrist and arm twists and pushes towards, so you're in position. And then you circle touching before you go into the next technique.
The next one. Oh, right. Yeah.
How did you learn applications from your Sifu? I mean, how was that done?
Well, I say fan style is usually, nearly always taught 1-to-1. So for the last 17 years, I've been taught 1-to-1, except for the 2-man forms when I've had to have another student. Mainly because he was trying to teach the other student as well. So he needed a couple. So there's 2 old guys who are retired in their 60s, and they come now. The last couple of years they've come when I've gone, and they help out. So I've got somebody to work with. But for the first sort of 15 years or so, it was me and him, and he'd show me and knock me about a bit. He's the first to say he's nothing in comparison to his teachers. She was what they were called. There was three what they called the elders of Beijing Bagua. There was her, Fan Fenlang, who had a nickname Dagu, Fan Dagu, Big Auntie Fan, they used to call her. And she had two other Bagua people come to her every week for tea to talk about the old days and more than anything, and to discuss things. One was Chen Yo-sin, excuse me, who was Tin Tin Hua's son, the originator of Cheng style Bagua, and Guo Guming, who was one of Liang Dinpu's top students and taught people like Li Ziming. And they used to talk about things, and they used to watch Mr. Wen practice and give pointers. When she died in '67, he'd only had about 5 or 6 years with her. Now, he stayed with her husband, who is Wang Zhe, who was another student of her father's, till he died in 1970. So that's another 3 years on top of that. And he was a rough man. He loved a good fight. He was very strong till the end, and he taught Mr. Wen all the heavy stuff that Fan Dagu no longer practiced. So he got that from him. He also spoke to the other people. He had a very good friend who was another one of her students, and they pulled all their knowledge together to make sure they had most of it. And then when she died, she said that he should look at how the Chung people walk the circle and add it for competitions and for youngsters, because it was much more dynamic, because fan style walking is really demoralizing. It's terribly difficult and very hard work, and if you were to start off doing that, it just puts students off. So he said, learn some Chung, it's pretty, they like that. So for the last 2 years of Chen Yo-sin's life, in Dongdang Park, Mr. Wen and Chen Yo-sin used to practice together learning circle walking, so he knew how to walk like the Chungs. And for the last 2 years of Guo Guming's life, he helped him because it was difficult for martial arts. Guo Guming was a professional martial arts teacher, and we're looking in the 60s when it was difficult in China to be that sort of person, to be a professional. So a lot of training was done secretly. So he helped him in some of that. And he says that Guo Guming explained a lot of things that he didn't fully understand or didn't have a proper explanation for. Because Guo Guming was a professional martial arts instructor, and also quite literate. Whereas Wang Zhe was a turnip farmer. So he wasn't really that literate, so some of the things he couldn't fully express.
Right.
But Mr. Wen, my teacher, says that about quite a few people. He says that nowadays people aren't in the arts. People aren't what they were because it's a different time. Wang Zhe was a farmer, so he worked on the land all day and practiced martial arts. So his hands were like shovels. He was a big, strong man.
Yeah.
He says when he met the Tai Chi people that he knew, they were farmers. So you have farmer strength. So nowadays when people say, well, if I do this, will I have the same strength as... Well, no, because they're doing 8 hours hard labor every day.
Yeah. Extra 8 hours of training.
Yeah. So things are different. And he understands that. So he says that my teacher had an industrial accident. He was an engineer. So he's not what he was, but then he is in his 70s. And life for a lot of people in Beijing, and that has been difficult for quite. It's good now, but it wasn't in the the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s when they grew up. But unfortunately, there's a lot of traditional stuff lost because it's not pretty, and it's really hard.
It's the repetition and lack of instant results that I think puts a lot of people off. Because nowadays people want to go and buy a lesson and you know, have an instant result kind of thing. That's not true of everyone, but I think there is that thing about instant gratification, and you know, some of the traditional arts, it's the grind of the bread and butter stuff over time that gives you that foundation, which gives you that, you know, the 80%, if you like, or the 20%.
And that's in every traditional Chinese martial art. So you don't need huge amounts. You just need to know really well what you know.
Yeah.
If you've got the right bit, then you're almost there. The rest of it is icing.
Yeah.
And it's worth having to get to the higher levels, but you'll never get to the higher levels if you haven't got that 20%.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that most people ignore. It's the grinding arm, it's the stance work, it's the pounding through it.
That's the development, the structure, the power of the body that everything else needs to be functional.
Yeah. But
do you have much in the way of two-man drills, two-man conditioning sets, or?
Well, so we have the piercing hands two-man. So we have a two-man form which has quite a lot of grabbing and seizing and twisting in it. It gives you an idea of how some of the techniques, unless you're shown why, they really, you think, well, that's just superfluous. There's nothing there. There is you see it in a lot of bagua. The walking, it's exaggerated for competitions, and then they lean back, they kick out and lean back, and the hands come round and they lean back and they push out.
I have seen that.
Yeah. Now the technique, you don't lean back. It's not a kick in the chin. It's a kick in the nuts. But what it is it's a grab, a sort of double punch or something, or close in to your opponent. The hands come up, they grab their arms, you slide the arms to the wrists, you turn the wrists in, pull your body close in. Because your arms and that are connected to your body, and you've got the wrist turned in, their elbows are in their stomach. They can't move their arms. So then you push forward, which pushes their stomach out of the way, and their groin is in the perfect place to be kicked. And they can't defend against it because you've got hold of both their arms, and you've got full control because you've got your hold of somebody, so you're not going to lose your balance as you kick. But it's used now. It looks very beautiful, but it's so far away from how the technique works that unless you know that's how it's done, you'd never work it out.
You've mentioned the Bagua competitions a couple of times. So what does that entail now? Is that more kind of form or
Yeah, mainly form. I mean, they do. I mean, one of my Bagua brothers is a Sui Jiao man, a wrestler. He's a very, very good wrestler. I don't know whether you know many of the wrestlers. Well, it's not one of your areas, but there's a famous wrestling family in Beijing, and he's the son-in-law of one of the greatest ever wrestlers, and he is very good. He's getting on. He's just a bit younger than me, but he's still wrestling. He's still out there. They've got a bit soft recently. When I first went there, it's in Ditan Park. They have a wrestling pit there, and they get there early in the morning. They just dig a pit, basically. So turn the soil over, so make sure the stones are at the top. They rake it flat, and you fight on that. You wrestle on that. And the idea is to put your opponent on the floor. And they all have a go, and anybody can turn up and go, oh, I'd like a go, and they're really open and they're really nice, and there's no ego. And I've been beaten in that pit on numerous occasions by really old rickety men who hobble on, show me up, and hobble off. Yeah, but they are really, really fantastic people. But everybody can have a go. So if you've done a little bit of wrestling, but you're from a different group, you can see how your techniques work in a wrestling environment. There's no arguments, and you find that there are quite a few wrestling techniques in Bagua. There's quite a few sort of foot trips and sweeps and techniques that help you. And if you look at Sui Jiao and how some of the techniques work and how they train the single techniques, you can quite easily find them in most of the Bagua systems. So once you've found them, then that's the sort of environment you can go and have a test out. You go and see if you can get them to work.
Yeah.
There used to be quite a bit of pushing and shoving in Beijing, but all nice and friendly. But the government don't really like fighting anymore, and have decreed that you shouldn't really be fighting amongst each other. There's been several things on the internet recently where people who've got no reason to be fighting and think they can fight and are wrong.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's Mad Dog, isn't it? He's showing them up. He's picking his targets quite cleverly, to be fair.
Well, he's a friend of my Sui Jiao friend. Yeah, right. They know. In fact, it's Wang Tongqing is his name, and he's been the referee on several of the events.
Oh, wow.
Because everybody knows him and nobody will step in against him. So he's the sort of person that will make sure that nobody gets injured, because that'll be the worst thing. If somebody gets killed or something, it's not difficult, then that would cause all sorts of trouble. So he's the best man to have in there. He jumps in really quickly. But my teacher, Mr. Wen, has said before, said in the old days, it's an analogy, because my Chinese wasn't good. It wasn't good enough then to fully understand what he meant. He said a martial arts student is a person with a knife. It's blunt, and he's trying to find somebody who will sharpen it for him. So he finds a teacher who will sharpen that knife for him. Nowadays, people forget to bring the knife, or don't even have a knife to bring.
Yeah,
and that's how it is. You know, gone are the people now want to see something on the internet before they will believe it.
So, some people just want to see it only on the internet, and rather than go and do something, they'll just.
And then we'll sit there and go, well, they shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done this. Well, you know.
We have a question. We have a question here, Phil.
Yeah.
Says Kintu Lion says Bagua involves a lot of walking, stepping. Does one develop rooting like Tai Chi, or in Chen style anyway, or do you develop rooting when practicing the Bagua through the stepping?
Well, we do. We walk. Our walk is solid. It's say we are solid on our back foot until the front foot touches the ground. As soon as the front foot touches the ground, we try and get to an equilibrium relatively quickly. That's almost 50-50 weight. Mm-hmm. And then we slowly push through. So we are, you can't see the change in speed, but the foot moves slowly. And as soon as it touches the ground, we aim for equilibrium, which is like almost 50-50. And then we slowly push through.
The speeding up is the internal transfer of the weight from the back to the front. As soon as you've landed, that transfers, then you start moving again. And what you transfer to sort of you try and transfer to an equilibrium, like a 50%, 50-50. Yeah.
And from that position, you slowly empty the back leg. And then that back leg doesn't move until most of the strength is in the front leg, and then the back leg lifts very slightly, moves forward, and sits in the ground. We don't grab the ground with the front foot like in some of the Bagua systems. Grab the foot, grab the toes, grab the ground. I have been told that in Chung style they almost kick the front leg out. It's almost like a kick out, and then place it down. And then if you see some of the Chung stylists, they kick farther out, so their step is a long step. We don't do that. Ours is a short step. We keep solid into the ground. We say he constantly says sit. Zuo, it is in Chinese, sit, and it's the feeling of the hips sinking, not sticking your backside out, not turning it completely in, but sinking down. So it's like a solid, you're like a solid weight. So I would imagine I had the pleasure of doing some Chen Tai Chi with Feng Zhichang, who invented Hun Yuan and Chen Shi Tai Chi Chuan, who was an incredible Tai Chi man. Chen Fa-Ke's allegedly best student in Beijing, and he was a big lump, but he could do things that you only read in stories. You know, I once pushed hands with him. He used to practice in the same park in Ditan Park as I used to practice with my teacher, so I'd see him most days. And because I'm relatively big, he'd like to have a go. He'd have a walk around. He'd like to have a little push because I was bigger than quite a lot of the people that he worked with. But he would actually tell me where he was sending me, and there's nothing you could do. He just sort of disappeared. You close your eyes, you couldn't feel him. But he used to say he could stand rooted, solid, but as if he didn't care, as if there was no effort in it. And he explained to me that's what I was aiming for when I was walking. As soon as the foot is down, the body doesn't sink, but like inside sinks.
Yeah.
Because there's no movement of the frame, no movement. The head doesn't bob up and down, but it's like, he explained it like the back leg's full of water. You put the front leg down, and the water comes out of one leg and into the other. Yeah. Solidly, so it's a solid base. It's very difficult to put into words, and it's even harder to actually do.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I know what to do, and sometimes I can do it.
Yeah.
But
I know what you mean as well. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Are there any stories that kind of come out for you from your training with Sifu? Any aha moments or any particular lessons or teachings that kind of stick with you?
Yeah, I'd done. It's about this 2080 really. I'd done maybe six or 7 years with him, and he turned to me and said, "Right, I've taught you everything I know. Don't worry about coming again. You can come once a year if you like. You don't have to. Just practice really hard. I've taught you everything I know. You've got it all. Well done." I went, "Oh, okay. Thanks very much." I said, "If it's all right with you, I'd still like to come, because I'd like to have corrections, and I'd like to make sure that I don't make mistakes, because I'm not with you every day. When I'm at home, it's difficult." These were before the days of WeChat, where I can now just send him a message or send him some video and say, "Have I got this wrong again?" But there was none of that. I think I was still letter writing at that point. He went, "Okay, if you want to, we don't have to. There's no need." So for 2 years, I still came just after Chinese New Year, around the summertime and October, November time, a month at a time, 4 or 5 weeks at a time. And we went through all the basics over and over again. And he nearly killed me trying to get this walk right, and trying to get used to the twisting and the positions I was supposed to be in, which I thought I was in. And it appears that just the tiniest movement makes all the difference.
Yeah.
But each time I went, it was like, so that's how it's supposed to be. I thought, I looked in the mirror, it looked right, but it wasn't the feeling that I needed to get, I hadn't got. So over those sort of 2 years, every time I got the feelings that I was supposed to get. Things were supposed to feel a certain way. And then, so that was about 7 years. So that was about 9 years. After 2 years of that, so that's another six or 7 months, twice a day, every day. Because I was going to the class on the Saturday then, but I had Sundays off. A guy who was one of his original students from years ago turned up, who lives in Canada now, speaks perfect English, except with an American surfer accent. He said, well, "Mr. Wen wants to go for dinner with you." So we had a little chat, and he gave me a disc. He said, here is all the writing I've done. 120 pages of notes and things he'd written when he was with his teacher, lists of everything, all the background of it. You can have this, do whatever you want with it.
Wow.
Yeah, it used to be a secret book. Now it's a DVD or disc.
Oh yeah, because the thing is, the Chinese handwriting is appalling, especially if you're a very bad Chinese reader like me. So he spent 2 years typing the whole thing out.
Oh my God!
He typed it all out for me.
Incredible.
So that I could read it. Because you only need an extra dot or an extra line in a Chinese character, and it's gone. It's something completely different. And he wanted me to have it right. So he spent 2 years typing all this, which was unbelievable. And then we had dinner, and through this guy, because my Chinese has never been good enough. It's still not good enough. He said he told his old student that he'd said I'd learnt everything, that he didn't have to come and all this, that, and the other. And yet I was the only person, having been told that, who ever came back.
Yeah, smart man. Yeah. Smart man.
He said, right, you've now just about learnt what you need to do for the basics. Now, I hadn't got them, but I knew what I needed to get.
Yeah.
I said, right, so tomorrow we're learning this. He gave me another piece of paper with what we're learning, and I learned. And since then, I've learned a load more things, a lot more intricate things. So these, I said, I've given you the 20%, the stuff that you can do, that fitted you, and that suited you. I'm going to give you the rest now.
Wow.
Yeah. So it might take a while because his wife suffers from some medical problems and has gone blind. So he looks after his wife. So he hasn't got as much time as he had. But he says, I've got a plan. I'm going to teach you all of it.
Wow.
But,
incredible.
So you've got all this. You've got all this to come.
Are you teaching yourself, Phil?
I did for a couple of years. I taught for the community centre in London's Chinatown. I taught first thing in the morning, and I taught the OAPs and that. Who were a great bunch. And I teach a few people in Chelmsford in Essex, where I'm living at the moment. But I like to teach outside if at all possible, because I learn outside.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's an outdoor activity, and really it should be. So I've got a few people who learn from other people who come to me, who I've known for years, and we practice together and we do stuff. And I've got a couple who I've got an older guy who was fantastic at trying. He's trying his best.
Yeah.
Some things are really difficult because as you get older, especially if you're a Westerner, certain things are difficult. Yeah. One of the hardest things that Mr. Wen thought I would find was an old original form, which is called Ba Shi Tui, 8 fists pounding, which is done in a circle. So you do the circle walking, but each change requires you to spin into low Keilan Ma.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you do that 16 times in this form because you do the change on both sides. And he told me before I started it, he said, well, just do a little bit of it because it's too difficult. But I'm used to doing Keilan Ma because I did it with Mr. Chu.
Excellent.
So it's one of the few things I can do.
I'll stop off, have a cup of tea halfway, and the rest.
So it's one of those things. It's like a cartoon. It's the greatest thing in the world, but I can only do it once. Yeah, so that's I can practice it, and I can practice it once. I can't do it more than once.
Yeah.
Because it just takes too much energy.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic form. The techniques are great. Basically, they're all spinning back fists with other techniques, and it's getting used to getting a really good spinning back fist and real strength and solidity in your lower technique. Because if you go too quick and your legs aren't strong, you fall over. So that's how it's done. So the one thing that he thought I had real trouble with was the one thing I didn't have trouble with. But some of the things that the Chinese have no trouble with, I'm
Yeah.
I really struggle.
Yeah.
Did he it through his teaching? Did you find the palm methods that suited you, or did he kind of direct you towards that?
No, I used to turn up, and he used to give me a sort of an A4 piece of paper, which he typed out for me. Name of what you're going to do, background of what it is, list of all the techniques, the names of all the techniques.
Wow.
I will see you at this place at these times. He'd have made the arrangements in his mind how long this was going to take. If I was there 4 or 5 weeks, he would rush through the teaching of the techniques for the first 2 weeks, because he wanted at least 2 weeks to go over it and over it. Mm-hmm. He said he would never teach me anything if we didn't do all of it, the whole bit, the whole form, or the whole technique, because he said that he didn't want me like this. I haven't been there since November. I should have been twice this year already. I've just changed my September flight. He said he didn't want to get halfway through something and me not be able to get the other half for whatever reason. So he wanted me to have the totality of each bit. So if after a week I was falling behind with the techniques, or one of the techniques was really difficult, I couldn't get it, he'd add another. We'd have an evening session, so we'd have a couple of nights in the park as well. Okay. We just add more time to the training so that we could get the rough bones of it down in 2 weeks. We could hone it in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and then when I got back the next time, I'd have to perform it, and he'd be happy or unhappy. And if he was happy, we'd spend another 4 or 5 weeks getting it better. But I'd never leave with half a form, because it didn't want that to happen. So
yeah. So you in the family style of Baguazhang that you have. So I'm just going back to something you said before. So you have different types of palms, right? I think you mentioned chopping palm,
yeah,
knocking palm, and then
lapsing, knocking, chopping, piercing.
Yeah. And each of those palms will have another set of techniques. So
yeah, each palm has if you think of the 8 big palms,
as
8 forms,
right?
8 complete forms. And if you think of each of those complete forms mainly being about one of the techniques, one of the palms.
Yeah.
So all the techniques that you are likely to use using, I think, chopping. Chopping is one of my favorites. P.
Yes.
This one.
Yeah.
So all the techniques. So the Ji Ben Gung for that is your 4 directions, 8 points.
Yeah.
So, and you start just facing one way in a low horse stance. It's a short, low horse stance, and then your feet go into a triangular step, and you do the basic technique. So that's a slice across and a slice out.
Right.
So you do that this way, and then the other foot, so in like this. So with this one, you're trying to relax. You're trying to relax the shoulders, trying to relax and get a whipping action. So you start off with that. But there's 3 of these. There's this one. There's this one. There's this one. So it rotates out. It goes towards the throat. Rotates out in. Rotates out. So you do those, and you do 50 of those in that position. Then you go. You do your 4 directions, 8 points one way. 4 directions, 8 points the other way. Then you do the backwards and forwards, so from the front to the back, from side to side. And for that, I haven't got the room to do it, but from that, the hand comes down, it comes round the body. This hand comes round as you spin, crosses, and you come out the other side. So you gain speed.
Wow.
Then you can interact those 3 different positions and those different movements in that. Then you have the form that has all the other techniques in it. And in that, it does have techniques from all the other palms, but it's mainly everything that you can use and all the footwork for this and this sort of technique.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I say it works relatively well for me because it's not that low. Piercing is you sweep down, so all the weight's on one leg, other leg comes out, you sweep up. So when you're doing it in 4 directions, 8 points, the sweeping backwards and forwards is so tiring on the legs. To be honest, I'm a fat man. I think it's not. It's something I can do, but I have to have a lie down afterwards. It's there are the young Chinese lads, they can do it all day. Their hips can open enough, and I can do it now when I couldn't do it before. But it's still demanding.
Each of those forms, you're doing it like doing it many times for each direction. So it'll end up being hundreds. You're just drilling this thing right.
So the Jibeng Gong is the 4 directions, 8 points. So you can drill that all the time, and then the actual form. If you put when you've put this on the Essex fan style Baguazhang, there's a video of me doing knocking palm. Right. The beginning of that video is the 4 directions, 8 points.
We'll have to
with knocking palm. So you'll see the foot position. You do that with all the different palms. So with piercing, there's several different piercing. For piercing, your fingers are tight together and your thumb comes across like this. But in piercing, the piercing form, there is a section when you pull your thumb across here and the fingers come in, so that you can drill into certain parts. There's also a bit in piercing that your thumb is out here. Right, thumb is out here for catching the outside of the eye, so that the fingers, when they hit the face here, guide this thumb into the bone part of the eye, because that isn't as strong as your thumb, and it will break the eye socket. It's used. We do a lot of the piercing like this. We pierce towards the forehead and drag the hand down. So if you pierce towards the eyes, people lean back. So as you pierce slightly above the eyes because they lean back, and then you drag the hands into the eyes.
Right.
There's all the techniques used for that. The blocks in this, you block across, you rotate around the arm, and you pierce out. So it's all the techniques that you would use for piercing, but it doesn't suit me. I can do it, but it doesn't suit me. It's one of those ones but you can practice it much higher. So I can practice it at a much higher level, and I can practice the Jibeng Gong. The Jibeng Gong is not as difficult as the application form. So I can still have the use of all the techniques.
Yeah.
I just can't do the I can do it, but
the drilling over and over drilling.
I'm not quick enough in those sort of positions. But there again, say if you're doing tar, which is the single push, or you're doing zhuang, you need a bit of oomph. You need a wide back and good strength in the hips, because the body comes round, the hips turn, and out you come.
Ties in. One last question. You've covered it already, Phil, but just if you could, just a recap. From Mark Roberts, it says, "Hi Phil, loved all the stories from the old days. Could have listened to them for hours. Sorry if you already talked about this, but had to miss part of the interview. What are the main methods of force or power generation in your system?"
Well, it's I'd say it's all about circles. It's all about like a spring.
Yeah.
It's let me just think the way to describe it. If you get this hand position correct, this becomes so tight, and relax it, it becomes like an iron arm. So when you move forward, when you step forward with it, it doesn't bend. So against somebody else's stretched out arm, it doesn't bend. Quite a lot of people say Bagua is about change. But you can look at the characters and the pronunciations of these things and look at it a different way and say it's a continuation rather than just change. It's a continuation of the movement. So you quite often see in Bagua this hand position. So you see this. So you see this is for pushing and warding away. You see it in Tai Chi as well. Fair lady works the shuttle. But this hand here can be used as a block. But to continue the block, the hand comes on here. Continue block, you just rotate the hand and press down on the arm.
Yeah.
continue moving. As you're pressing down the arm, you continue moving forward. If his hand raises, this hand comes under the arm, and there you've got the change position. But that's a spike into the throat or the eyes.
Yeah.
If he drops the arm, it comes above the arm, and it goes across the throat. This grabs the hand,
Nice.
and you pull the arm, and you strike the face. But it's continuous movement.
That's a great explanation, actually. Yeah.
But, and also that the pressure is coming from the ground. You're pushing through that back heel. You're pushing up through your body and out. So anything that comes into your body goes back down and through that heel. So you're solid.
Yeah.
The feet, there are stepping where it's called in Mandarin Baibu and Kobu, where the feet turn in. But these are techniques for trips and pulls. But if you look at Hungar, look at the horse stance in Hungar, and when they change from horse stance to bow and arrow stance, and they hook their opponent's leg in horse stance and turn to bow and arrow, and the shins grind, and they put weight on the other person. That's the same as you do if you hook with the foot in Bagua. Hook with the foot in Bagua, push forward, push through your strength into their weakened leg. So it's same as there's something called head and earth palm. When you see it quite a lot in Barriga, this moves up, this moves down.
Yeah.
Ours is really quite difficult because this hand turns as much as it can. So you're trying to turn and put the thumb towards the center of the circle, and this hand turns round. You try and put the thumb away from this thumb, and the back of the palm sits on your hip. But doing this, that's another one for you Southern Mantists. That's tightening here.
Yeah, dip
It's
right
pulling down, and
Yeah.
it's raising here. So you're opening here, tightening here.
Yeah.
But as you do that, you're turning in as well. So if you do a piercing hand towards a person, and then as you keep moving, the arm rotates. That rotates their fighting arm up. As it rotates their fighting arm up, and you're stepping closer, this hand is coming in, and it can strike towards their hip, push them out of position as it opens their rib cage on their side.
Yeah.
But from there, you can continue. You can drop the elbow into the rib cage. So we do that with one of our blocks, which is a strange block. This hand can just move forward and grab the throat. This thumb goes on this side, and this goes into the blood supply. And because of the strength in the hands, you get a good squeeze. You can attack the windpipe, and also you're putting pressure on the carotid artery. But it's also used as a lifting block. So the hand comes up like this, and we're aiming for under the elbow, where the nerve endings are.
Yeah.
It's surprising how strong this bit is. You hit hard on that nerve ending, you get a deadened arm, but you don't stop. You continue. So you hit under the arm, you grab the nerve endings, you continue moving forward, but the elbow then attacks the ribs again, which have opened up because you've lifted the arm.
Right.
So we're looking at a continuous movement.
Yeah.
So it is change.
Yeah.
But it's continuous.
Continuous
Yeah.
change. I like that.
I do like that explanation. It's always and that constant pressing as well, which is taking the battle forward, taking their territory.
We are at this 2-hour mark, and it's gone by so quickly. Learned so much.
Yep. Phil, that was absolutely fantastic. It's given me a great insight into your Bagua, but generally Bagua a little bit more. So on behalf,
It's all right. I say,
I think we could. I mean, I want to learn more, and we could go on for a lot more. But like,
I did ask why. That's why I asked if you were teaching. If people did want to get in touch and learn a bit more about Bagua, if you were available to do that, or
I mean, I teach. I say I like to teach. I've got a place in near my in the garden, which has got a cover. It's not completely waterproof, but then I've been wet before. So,
well, if you could leave the details, if anybody,
I'm inexpensive.
Huh?
I'm inexpensive.
And in nature, That's as it should be.
Well, I say I've always learnt. I've learnt all my Bagua outside, all outside. My teachers always said it should be practiced outside. You need the fresh air. You need air.
Yeah, yeah. Lovely.
Qigong should be done outside.
I believe so. Yeah, properly.
We have
Trees, running water.
Yeah, we have two separate Qigongs. One for health and one for strength.
Yeah.
There are set rules for which direction you face, depending on whether there's wind or not. You know, so but it's all been designed, it's all learnt and taught outside. It's you. That's how you regulate your body.
Right.
Yeah. So
you have a big tree as well in the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sifu Phil, thank you very much.
No, I hope it was all right. Yeah.
No, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. It was a great insight into your own personal journey, but also into the art of Baguazhang. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Oh, and after we must get together when this is eventually finished.
Totally. We've you know, it's looking bleak at the moment, but I'm sure both Nish and myself are really looking forward to trying to meet up with some of you guys. So
because I was looking through my bits and pieces and I found a high 8 tape that I took years ago that you'd like.
Yeah, you can get that converted onto.
Yeah.
There's places that convert those, isn't there?
Because it's got Paul and Jim and Ichikun and Ipsoi.
Brilliant.
I think it was on the. It was either the pineapple or the Erdang.
Yeah, was that 1999?
It may have been.
Yeah,
I did the video. I've still got the original high 8 tape.
See that?
Yeah.
You've got to see that. Yeah.
So you can have it because it doesn't cover my thing.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant.
So,
we'll meet up as soon as possible. Whenever you're free, if you just drop us a line anyway, because I think there aren't places open in Chinatown, so drop or for dim sum or something.
Yeah.
Be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
No, it's my place. I just found it. I told you I turned up everywhere.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, definitely. If you get that to us, and then we'll definitely get it converted and let people see. There is some footage out there, but it'd be great to see if it's.
Yeah, because I put it on DVD for Paul when I did it years ago. But I say I found the original.
Amazing.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again to Sifu for all of the stories and the learning about his Bagua. So again, thank you so much.
Sean says, great interview. Thanks, Phil. Must have a yum cha sometimes.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care, gents.
Cheers.
Ta-da.
Hey, Phil. We stopped going live now.
Right, we're not live, Phil. We've just come off. Thank you.